Hi everyone, I hope you've had a really good stitching week. My week hasn't gone too badly, but there has been actually a few hiccups in my stitching week. This project that I'm working on at the moment is the Aurora cabin, and it's by Dimensions. And anybody who has done a Dimensions project will know that it can be a little bit tricky. And the reason why Dimensions can be a bit tricky is because some of their patterns will have will use threads that are blended together. So you might be using one color with another color and also different strands. So you may also have a stitch that requires 3 strands, or for instance up here, these particular navy blue stitches are actually using 6 strands of floss. So some people don't like that. Other people are a bit afraid to do it. I haven't actually found it too difficult, and I've been going along here with my 6 strands and I've quite gotten used to it. So I'm filling this out quite nicely, and what I find the trickiest in this particular pattern is the trees. The trees here are actually a little bit of a nightmare. That's actually one of my favorite phrases when it comes to cross stitch, because these little bitty, these half stitches here that you can see, part of the tree here, are all 6 strands. That's 6 strands being used. So that's a whole length of floss that you cut off, and instead of tearing it apart and using 1 or 2 or 3, you use the whole lot. What I can say is that I think that if you went and took one of the strands away, if you found that a little bit more comfortable, I don't see that there is a problem with that. That's really thick. These are really thick, and that's okay. It provides a nice texture, but I don't think it would lose any value if you were to peel away a strand or 2. It would thin it out. It'd look less sort of like it's moving into the foreground, but I don't think it would be a huge problem. So if you preferred to do it that way. But I think after working something like this and seeing how it goes, that's when you can say, okay, well, next time I do a Dimensions like this, I think I might be able to make a decision as to whether I can peel away a strand or not. But you know, you have to look and see. You have to practice a little bit first to be able to see if you're comfortable with doing that. So what I had a problem with recently, and this is like just a major, you know, pain in the, you know what. So what happened is I was doing all these navy blue, this navy blue area up here, and somehow I miscalculated, and I seem to have added a row at the end. So before I'd actually done this part, any of this here, I'd added an extra line of blue, which, you know, that's fine until you get down to about the bottom of the blue. But then what happens when you get to the rest of the colors? So the only way around this was there was only a couple of options that I could see, not including the one of throwing the whole piece away and just abandoning the project, which I think would have been a huge shame. So the only option I could find was to either just continue with that extra row down and do an extra stitch of everything that's on this edge. So for instance, if I've got this kind of purple going down here, I've done an extra line of purple on the right, because there is an extra line that's not in the chart that I have created myself. Yeah, just to make my life more difficult, I think. So that was one option. The other option would be to unpick everything, because I've been going in rows left to right and back and forth. I would have to frog every single row back and then start again, obviously minus that extra column at the end. So for me, that's something like torture. So I thought, well, this is not insurmountable. I think I can add just 1 extra stitch every time I get to the end of that row. So when I get to the end of this row, I just do the 1 extra stitch at the end of whatever colour is before that stitch. I don't think that's going to stand out too much. I don't think anyone's going to really notice. You've got a whole thing of trees, different colours and shades going on here. Who's going to notice 1 extra stitch at the end? But obviously, if I just left it blank, then you're going to have just a very uneven edge. So that was the plan, and so it hasn't put me off doing it, and I'm still quite happily going along. But as long as I just have to remember that there is an extra stitch to be made that isn't in the chart at the end of my piece. So yeah, so that's not exactly fantastic, is it? But it's not the worst thing. I'm sure there are worse things that can happen. Apart from that, I think it's all been going quite well. I've been keen to get down this area, but I've been really wanting to focus on these trees, because I find these trees, for me, it feels like if I can get some of the worst parts done, then it's a bit of a sigh of a relief, and then I get to work on the stuff that I really enjoy a bit more, which is the cabin and the rocks and what looks like the river or the lake. The trees are beautiful, but they are a bit of a headache because they are so confetti. Like, if you're not, this isn't one to be doing when you're watching television. I could not do all these stitches while watching TV, because that would have been quite difficult. So I'm going to do a little bit of stitching again, and I still have this little area here to finish with my navy blue. And all those 6 strands going through do make a little bit of a sound, which is actually quite a pleasing sound because it's quite relaxing. And 6 strands of floss, mark my words, it can tangle just as much as having a couple of strands. In fact, possibly more so. So you do have to be a little bit more careful with that. But all in all, that hasn't been as much of a problem as I predicted. I thought working so many strands was going to be really awkward, but it hasn't been too bad. And I have to say that this is probably one of the more difficult pieces that I've attempted. But don't let that put you off. I mean, it is not anything too difficult. I think it's just a matter of reading the instructions properly, making sure you understand what's required for the stitches, making sure you're careful when you're counting, and going at, you know, a relatively decent pace and not rushing through it. Like, if you're the type of person that tends to miss stitches a lot, or really doesn't like combining strands and colours, then possibly this particular pattern isn't for you. There's plenty of other gorgeous pictures like this that you could use, that you could do, which are just as lovely. But making that little bit of effort is so worthwhile, and I'll tell you why. Because I can see, maybe, I don't know whether it's that apparent on the screen, but I can see the effect that this lovely texture has, and it has such a lovely sort of 3D. See there, it's all got a little bit tangled. Oh no, come on now. You were doing so well. We hadn't had a tangle for the last couple of weeks, and I do not want to take on a battle with 6 strands, trust me. There we are. It's decided to behave. I can still see the lovely way that the thicker areas are sort of coming forward in the picture. And it really is a lovely effect, and this sort of recedes into the back a little bit, which is nice. So have I done a lot of stitching this week? Well, compared to what I've done before, the answer would have to be no. And the reason is that homeschooling started this week, and that hasn't gone fantastically. My son, who is 12, is kind of at that age where video games and that sort of thing are all far more interesting than schoolwork. Although he's very, very capable, he's also very cheeky, and if he can get away with not doing something, he will try his best. So it was a tricky start, especially after having Christmas off and, you know, basically just having all his time to himself to do the stuff he likes to do, and then suddenly, bam, it's back to a routine. Really kind of throws them off. So yeah, a little battle of wits going on. But I think we may have got some of that sorted out now, and I don't know what it is, but you know, it's just incredible that as soon as you say, oh, it's time to get on to your computer and do some schoolwork, I've never seen how quickly he can turn into the Invisible Man and literally be nowhere to be seen. So he's hiding quite a bit and thinking it's quite amusing. So yeah, you know, it's all fun and games when it comes to parenting, but we'll get there in the end. He has really tried since Monday, so we're making a little bit of progress. We're slowly getting back into the thing. So yeah, that sort of all impeded my stitching a bit, because by the time I managed to peel him off his bed and actually get him to look at what the schoolwork he'd been sent, I was just too tired. And by the time the evening came, I just thought, you know what, I can't count anything, I can't do it. I just want to sit here and stare at the wall. And that's kind of how I felt. But now I feel a bit more like myself again, which is my usual bubbly self. Well, I hope I'm usually bubbly. I try not to be too sour or quiet. I do like to engage with what I'm doing and try to make a good experience out of it. I mean, what's the point of doing something if you don't get some pleasure from it, some enjoyment? But I have to say, when I found out that I had done this extra row, there was a few moments of cussing and wanting to just quit, completely quit. And I'm sure you can relate to that. Like, who wants to start a whole patch like this all over again? But I found a workaround. So even though it's a little bit of a pain, I'm going to have to do an extra row. I mean, an extra row is nothing compared to what I've already done. It's not going to make a huge difference. Thankfully, I've still got enough space at the edges, so I can still frame this if I want to. What I am feeling a little bit nervous about is the actual back stitching of this. I don't quite know. Oh gosh, the other thing is I think I might have actually misplaced my original chart. I've taken photocopies of this chart, but I've put the originals away somewhere for safekeeping. And this happens to me all the time. I put things away somewhere for safekeeping and then I have no idea where they are when I want to find them again. So I had done a little search and I couldn't come up with them. So my originals are somewhere, and I at the moment I don't want to turn the whole, you know, every cupboard over just to see if they're there. I'm going to have another good thorough look. But if I can't find them, I'm thinking, I know I can't really show you the chart very much, but you can see from this corner what I've actually done. I've marked everything off in this big Sharpie pen. So I don't think I'm going to be able to, see now this bit down here hasn't been marked. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this back stitching when it all looks like that. So it's going to be awkward. but I'll have to see if I can find those originals, because they'll be much clearer. I mean, I think it looks gorgeous even without the back stitching, but I think the back stitching will just make it even more so. So I do actually want to, you know, finish it properly. What I don't think I'm going to do, and I decided this last time, is those wretched knots, French knots. I know that they're not so bad once you've practiced them for a while, but I really don't feel like I want to be honest. So for this design, I think I'm going to not do the snow. I'm going to do the French knots. I like it like it is, and that's it. There is another pattern which I'm doing by dimensions, and there is also a lot of snow. I think I may add the snow to that one because the effect of it is so nice in that particular picture. So this is going pretty well. I don't have an estimated date of finish. I can't really estimate things that well because I have various projects that I'm working on. And because I have various projects, I work on them sort of randomly. So I don't really know. Now I've got a nice little knot at the back of here. My knots are coming out really easily at the moment. It's a good day. No screaming required today. So, you see, it hasn't been that difficult to do this 6 strand along here. So what I do is I do a little bit of this kind of tedious section, and then I do a little bit of the more pleasant section with it, which is just the plain rows down here. And then that's a little bit of a balance, so you don't get too fed up. Because if I had done all of this at the same time, it just feels a little bit tiring. There's nothing to actually keep your interest. But when you're working on areas like this, there is a lot going on here that keeps your interest. Although this particular section is very good for watching television. So as long as you're still careful with the fact that you're using the 6 strands, you can still watch TV and not go too far wrong. Whoops, there we go. That one just, I'm amazed how quickly a thread can just turn into a big knot. So I'm going to do some more of this one today, and then I'm going to go back to doing some of my heaven and earth designs again and try to catch up a little bit with those. Now this is where the actually this next stitch I'm going to do, this is where the chart actually ends, but then now I have to add an extra stitch just because that's what I did at the beginning. So this extra stitch now is not in the chart, but I have to keep the thing consistent. So in you go. But these things happen. You will at some point come across it yourself. You will find that you've done something remarkably, ridiculously stupid, and you'll find a way around it. So I think I'm going to stop there for the moment. So thank you for watching, and I'll be back again soon. Let me know how you're getting on with your project. I always love to hear from you in the comments. So I'll speak to you soon, and take care.